Okay, abusia makwa ba shonko so edeba POG Media so abusia yembonra eye yensemu abusia Gabby finally waba be break silence on eye EOCO ho ensensem ene ono say EOCO for ebe frɛ no na maye investigations be about NPP criminalities bia na abusia ose EOCO for no ono omo frɛ na obekɔ na wakɔ akɔyi ensem bia no bet Ken Ofori-Atta osanso ede ne ho latest update by EOCO for abusia sisi ano Gabby akɔ lead the investigation on Ofori-Atta enye easy kra mama yanko na yanko nkuti ensema Gabby editu dwa efa ansa na ebekɔ no wo ensem kan bi afahye your comment section like na share ma afofron so ensa into me enkabi aha POG Media so madam ase.
It's like I mentioned earlier that we will do. A few days ago, the running mate to Dr. Bawumia let it out that he had been called by EOCO or the OSP or something. Have you been invited or called by any of them? EOCO?
Why should I?
I don't know.
Why should I be?
You are seen as somebody who had access to the corridors of power, to the number one man in the land,
So
and
that
influential.
That requires investigation.
No, I'm only asking what the people are asking.
I think some people actually forget that I'm a lawyer, and I'm a senior partner in a corporate law firm, and that's essentially my main job. Okay, as to whether I was close to government or not, I influenced the government. I never held any political position, and that's the decision that I took. And when I tell people I'm not a politician, they don't believe me. I've always considered myself as a political strategist, and I was very much involved in the politics of this country. And I think it was right in the studio last year that I said that I've moved on from frontline politics. It doesn't mean that I'm not involved in politics, but the frontline politics that I used to do, I think I've moved on.
So we won't see you in marches anymore?
I mean, if we are marching for economic integration, yes, you see me as a continent. Okay? But I mean, my DNA is Danko Dombo Busia. There's absolutely two words about it. In whichever way I can support, I will do so. But it's the frontline politics that I don't. Yes, I have. The last time I was at NIB, and I believe it's probably once for a very long time. It was actually to represent the client.
Okay.
The client, was questioned about a client's issues, but to be questioned about what? I mean, that's I don't know. Why are you expecting me to be?
Oh no, not me. Someone's wondering and asked, so I'm just sharing their questions.
But I mean, if they have some questions and I'm in a position to give answers, I'm free to go.
Absolutely,
I have no problem with that.
I mean,
they have to do their work, but I think in doing their work, sometimes, I have to mention this. I'm disgusted about how Ken Ofori-Atta has been treated.
I was about to ask you about
I'm
that.
disgusted.
Have you been in touch with him since his surgery?
Of course.
How's he doing?
He's doing well. I think he's on an intensive recovery.
Okay.
For the next couple of weeks at least, and then I'm sure, But it went well. It went well, and we thank God for that. It went well. But I think that I have been disgusted about how he has been treated. And the Ken Ofori-Atta that I know came to politics not for personal gain. He came to politics because he believed he could serve. And we saw what happened in the first 4 years that he was finance minister. Of course, matters just, we saw what happened, especially after 2021. And I think when I hear the conversation about what the country went through, I think we forget one thing, and I'll get to that, but let me finish with Ken. I think we've been unfair to him. And I will say this for a fact. Because, yes, for the first 4 years, we saw the work that he did. Akufo-Addo's vision, ambitious as they were, about free education, the roads that were done. We moved Ghana's road network from about 78,000 to nearly 100,000 kilometers. Okay? And you need to fund these things. The flyovers that were built. Okay? Nearly 1,000 SHS blocks that were built. You need to fund those things. The primary schools that were built, the kindergartens that were built, you need to fund these things. The food for whatever program, is it cash, what is it? Planting for food and jobs. Yeah. Okay? 1D, 1F. You know, all these things, the Zongo, all these things, you needed to find money to fund it. At the same time, you had a banking crisis, which required about 25 billion to fix. At the same time, you were expanding facilities, whether it's health, whether in health, whether in the agri sector, whether in education, whether in sports. You have to find money for all these things. And then you were employing more people within the public sector. You were equipping the police. You were equipping the military in ways that we had never seen in this country. And these are the facts. The facts are there in terms of the revenues that had to be mobilized, the work that had to be done. Akuffo-Addo came and he was in a hurry. Okay? And then you needed to engineer the financing to ensure that you had a stream of funds coming in to undertake the projects that the president wanted done. And then, of course, COVID hit. Okay? Of course, the president himself understood that the economy that we had was weak. That's why he came up with the 1D, 1F thing. So that you can begin to build the industrial base of the country. So there was a plan. And in building all these things, you have to also what? Equip the natural, not just the natural resource base in terms of the value addition, but also the human resource base. You need to equip them. So the spending in TVET, the spending on education. So all these things they were trying to do so many things around the same time. And he has to be funded. He needs to pay salaries of NACOP. He needs to pay salaries of this, salaries of that. More teachers, more nurses, more doctors. And then COVID hit it. But I think one thing that we forget, okay, I think the problems actually compounded not just because of COVID and not just because of Ukraine-Russian war, but something happened in the 2020 elections. The MPP lost its majority in parliament. And for the first time in our history, we had a speaker from the opposition. And we keep forgetting the impact of that. If you remember, go to the trend and see when the budget was thrown out. If you look at the numbers, you see that's when the foreign investors in our domestic bond market started pulling their money out. And then the rating agencies started downgrading Ghana.
Yeah.
Okay? And then your policy, your revenue generation policy called A-Levy also took about 4 months and ended up being cannibalized before it was passed. Okay? So when all these things were happening, what it showed was that you had lost the capacity to manage your economy because you were not in control of your how long did it take to pass this so-called D-Levy?
It went under certificate of urgency.
Absolutely. Overnight. Absolutely. And I understand that even it will raise more money than E-Levy. How long did it take to pass the E-Levy? 4 months, 5 months? And all this while, your investors and your creditors are looking at, is this government able to manage its economy? Okay? They had over 100 companies that had tax exemption in Parliament to be passed for under 1D1F. They were not passed. There were things that government wanted to do, but had absolutely no control of the legislature, because you had a speaker who will play ball when it suits him. Okay? And you had an opposition which were doing their job, because opposition is what? Its first job is to oppose. So I think that the challenges that the government faced after losing its majority in Parliament and still holding on to the executive, those challenges should be better analyzed, and then you would then begin to appreciate the challenges that the country went through and the decision that the government itself had to take.
Okay.
But I think that, and we all know the difficulties. Ken Ofori-Atta almost lost his life when he had COVID. I believe November or so, 2020.
2020, yeah.
2020.
Yeah, 2020 November.
Okay? And I was with him when he was being taken to the Mayo Clinic for treatment. And when he got there, they couldn't even believe how he survived. And he recovered, and there were still complications, sorry. And he still served. Okay? And he still served. So if now he tells you that, look, my heart is clean, yes, there may be certain decisions that you may question today, but I know that I did not take a penny. I did not do anything against the state for personal gain. But at the moment, I have this health issue, and it's not new with Ofori-Atta to deal with. I've been given a date. Let me sort it out and come back. And then you think that you will call him what? A fugitive? I mean, it's for me, it's an evil decision for anybody with conscience to take. For someone who has not shown that he is afraid to face justice and has given you no reason. It's not as if he left the country when you said you were looking for him. He sneaked out of the country. He didn't. I thought that was very unfortunate, unnecessary, and you cannot destroy a reputation that's been well fought over the decades, not just in politics, but particularly in the business arena, and just by an emotional press conference say that about the man. I thought that was very unfortunate, and hopefully he will recover, and the Ken that I know, he will come back to face the law. And I know from my conversation with him that his conscience, he believes his conscience is clean. Because whatever he did, he may have gotten it wrong in some instances, but he did it with a clear conscience and not for personal gain. Okay. And I hope that he'll be given the opportunity to do so.
We're looking forward to that day. For now, we pray for his speedy recovery. Also, the election. And as you did say earlier, Gabby, that it is not the fact that John Mahama won that surprises you. It is how the NPP lost that surprises you. What's your view on the Okwe report? Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. And I remember asking Akuffo was in the report. Even he hasn't seen it, which I think is quite unfortunate.
Wow.
That, yes, they haven't had the decency, I must say, to give him a copy. The president, he hasn't seen it. Yes, and I think that's quite unfortunate, because I've heard it being quoted. I've heard the General Secretary quoting it, even the flag bearer for 2024, who rightly so must have a copy, is also quoting from it. But the president has not seen a copy. They haven't. They don't think it's important to give him a copy anyway, and he won't ask for it. If you feel he deserves it, you will let
sure
him.
He will take it.
But you see, I haven't seen the Okwe report, but I think that the Okwe report, I hope it starts with Professor Okwe. Okay, and I say so in a the point I made, in a sense that you remember the MPP wanted to repeat Okwe, Professor Okwe, as a speaker.
Yeah,
and that didn't fly. And that's where the MPP problems, if you like, began. So I hope that the Okwe report takes into consideration that Okay, once he didn't go through, then their issues started. Look at all the things that the government couldn't pass, and I hope that the minority leader now will find a way to articulate those things. Maybe call him here so that people understand the challenges that the government faced, even on the matter of reshuffle. If you look at those who lost out, some of those who lost out in earlier reshuffle were among those who led some of the problems, the challenges that the executive faced in Parliament. So I think really that report itself, whatever it is, I haven't seen it. I don't know what to say about it, but I can see that there's a group going around talking about constitutional changes in the party. I think it happens. It's quite normal when you lose elections. You review, find out what is wrong, and see how you can correct it in time for the next election. And I hope, and some of the stuff we've been hearing, it's expansion of the Electoral College. They have to be careful. In 2009, when Akuffo, Addo, McMahon, and all of them sat down to expand the Electoral College, the first thing that they thought they could do is they asked, how are we going to fund it? And I remember those days, Ken Ofori-Atta and the others had an answer to that. Because from some numbers that I've heard, if you expand it as they wish to expand to what, 400,000, 600,000, how much will it cost you to organize the
primaries and
precisely? And what steps has the party taken in terms of a membership drive to raise that money? So they have to look at all those things and take decisions that they can fund, and not rush into taking decisions, because it's good to expand the Electoral College. It's good to look at the Electoral College, but if you're expanding it, it will cost a lot of money. Are you ready for it? Have they started any membership drive that we can say that it will raise you the 30 million or whatever that is required to do an enhanced Electoral College, to do the primaries for that? But I believe that the process of looking within to fix some of the things that are required to be fixed, I'm sure they are looking at that.
Now,
okay, abusuya we ne ensema so ewo political highway so eye EOCO NHS Gabby ede ensembi tuja reform ene the latest updates on Ken Ofori-Atta enye asem keto akra beda masesa mo jepene kokoti sa ensemwe edemai aha POG Media so beda mase